The year's 2005. I'm 12 years old and walking into my local card shop to see everybody huddled around one person playing with this device. It's got a wide screen, a little nub for an analog stick, and almost as many buttons and ports as my consoles at home. Now, I had just not even a year ago got a Game Boy Advance SP, and I am old enough to remember going from 2D to 3D games and how amazing that felt, and this felt exactly like that all over again, but in a portable fashion. And for some reason, I had never seen any advertisement or announcement for this device. The first time I was seeing it was right there in front of me. It was tangible. He even let me use it and try it, and my mind was absolutely blown. And in that moment, I was honestly just barely scratching the surface of what the PSP was truly capable of. I mean, this thing could play full movies and TV shows at DVD quality on these tiny little things called the UMDs, which were basically just DVDs in a protective plastic shell. And this thing went far beyond just playing video games and watching movies on UMD discs. It had a full-on flushed out operating system. For the time, that was pretty crazy. You had access to things like the internet, and it connected to Wi-Fi in 2005. Thinking back on it, this was probably the first device that I ever owned that made me need to ask people what their Wi-Fi password was whenever I went from place to place. You know, being able to load up MP4 files and MP3 files right on the memory card. And if you're wondering if this was any good for listening to music on the go, next to the power button here, it was this little slide down where it says hold, and it would inactivate all of the buttons on the device. So that way you could just safely slip it in your pocket while you had some headphones connected and listen to your music. This thing reminded me of how the PS2 launch came out with a DVD player, and it gave most families a reason to pick one up. For me, picking up a PSP was more than just playing games. It was an experience that I could take with me on the go. True freedom as a, young, almost teenager. I have so many incredibly fond memories of using this device, and that's why I thought it would be fun to make this video today, and we could kind of just look at it through today's, perspective and see how well it's really held up, because it honestly has. Now, this one in my hands is the PSP 3000 model. In particular, it is the Japanese version in a color called Vibrant Blue. And this is technically probably the best the PSP ever got out of the box. Some people might debate the PSP Go being better. I've never owned one personally, so I can't speak to that. However, I do know that this one has the best LED screen. It's nice and large, and it has, the functionality of the slim UMD drive, and it's just a really cool handheld. I do also own a PSP 1000. This one is also a Japanese model. And as you can tell, this thing is absolutely just wrecked. It does work. It powers on. The UMD drive sort of works sometimes, but as you can see, this thing is just beat up. The screen is really, really scratched up. There's a lot of like sun fading and yellowing and scratching on the buttons and the faceplate here. And the back door for the UMD drive is actually just completely shot. There's just so much going on here. There's supposed to be like a little mechanism here that goes in the front of this. That wasn't attached when I picked it up. And the reason I picked this one up is because there's actually a lot of amazing mod support for the PSP in 2025. Things like an IPS screen, as well as an HDMI mod that you can do to the PSP 1000 to give it a clean HDMI out signal to your TV. Now, unfortunately, the PSP 1000 model, this one here, never actually got support properly for video out from the factory. However, the PSP SLIM models, this one here, the 3000 and the 2000, which both look identical other than that screen, have the ability to do video out with component with this little port here. And though I very much want to just jump into all the amazing games and experiences that we had playing with this device, I think we should spend a little bit of time just talking about the XMB operating system that we have here. Now, of course, Sony went on to kind of uniform the brand and use this same style operating system with the PS3, but it was really remarkable at the time. There was all kinds of different things you could do. You could put on your own MP4 files from your memory card, or even save things from the internet and other games like pictures. Like if you have certain games that have a camera mode, they would actually save the camera pictures that you took right in here, which I thought was pretty neat. And you also, of course, got these cool little snap previews. So if you had a UMD disc in here and it was ready to play, it would show you a little preview of what the game was like. Now, of course, the system's modded, and we'll talk about that here in just a second. But I just think that's so amazing for 2005. Now, unfortunately, due to several changes in Wi-Fi standardization as well as overall upgrades to the internet as a whole, the internet browser on this device is pretty much useless in modern times. But thinking back to being a teenager with this device, having unsupervised access to the internet in a portable way was pretty awesome, to say the least. Now, today's video isn't really focused on homebrew for the PSP. It's more just looking back at it and seeing what it's like to use today. However, if you do want to mod your PSP, I highly recommend you do so. It's super easy. This will allow you to play backup games, and it is just so easy to do that I'll leave a link down below to a tutorial that I followed. And you're going to want to pick up one of these micro SD card adapters that goes right in the memory slot of the PSP. And this is going to allow you to load up all of your game backups. This is perfect if you have a PSP that no longer reads games off the UMD drive, and also allow you to carry around your entire library wherever you go. Now, if you've never played a PSP game and you're watching this video merely because you're interested in checking out the PSP and seeing what it has to offer, the PSP, for most intents and purposes, had games that were very close to PS2 games. I would consider the graphics of the PSP to be somewhere between a PS1 and a PS2, with a lot of the ports for the PSP looking almost identical to the PS2 counterparts. Now, one great example of a game that was ported to the PSP that's almost identical is going to be Tony Hawk's Underground 2. Now, they call this the Tony Hawk Underground 2 Remix Edition because there are some minor, small changes. But for most intents and purposes, this is basically the same as the actual game we got on PS2. Now, actually recording and playing with this device is really difficult with modern cameras because there's almost like a scan line effect that goes on with the PSP screen. It's definitely not something that in person is as noticeable as it is on camera, but if I shift the device around in any sort of way, the camera starts to struggle to focus. So I just really wanted to showcase what it looks like on this device. It truly does, to me, look like a PS2 experience with this game. And it's a lot of fun. These buttons, everything that they've done control-wise with the PSP just feels fantastic. Now, we have this little nub here for an analog stick, which I haven't actually brought up at this point. And a lot of games would use this as your primary function, but because Tony Hawk is more of a D-pad driven game, it actually works really well here. Now, another franchise from the PS2 era that got shown a lot of love was the Grand Theft Auto series. We actually got two Grand Theft Auto games that were their own standalone releases for the PSP. There was Grand Theft Auto Liberty City Stories and Vice City Stories. Vice City Stories, to me, was one of my absolute favorites. It kind of served as like a prequel to Vice City, which was my favorite game on the PS2 at the time. So it was really amazing. There was a cool feature on here too, where if you had MP3s already saved onto your PSP's memory card, you could turn on custom soundtracks if they were there, and then you would be able to listen to your own music inside of Vice City, which was just absolutely amazing. They also added other quality of life things like swimming, which was really cool to see because we only just got that with San Andreas. And honestly, the list goes on and on. We got things like Jack and Dexter games. We even got a Rock Band, which I obviously can't show you for obvious reasons, which was tons of fun. Dragon Ball Z Budokai games, Castlevanias, Metal Gears, you name it. Even things like God of War got a couple of releases on here. So if you really, really enjoy the PS2 era of gaming and you never had a PSP, it's highly worth it to check out. While filming that last segment, my battery actually died, and it brought up a good point. Now, this did use a rechargeable battery, which we did see with things like the DS and the Game Boy Advance SP, so it wasn't anything super new. One thing that I did really appreciate the PSP did, though, was the fact that the battery themselves was removable without actually having to, take a screwdriver or anything like that. So if you did have some extra funds and you wanted to buy some replacement batteries, I did know some people that used to keep a couple extra battery packs on hand. So that way, when they ran through their battery, they could just pop in another one super easy on the go and then start playing again. Now, when I think of the early 2000s and pop culture and video games and stuff like that, the very first thing that comes to my mind is street racing and arcade racing video games. And I'm happy to say that the PSP is just absolutely full of racing games, and they play amazing with this little circle joystick thing here that we got. And honestly, Midnight Club 3 Dub Edition for the PSP is practically the same game as it is on the PS2, and it's really amazing because this was one of those games that I knew everybody was playing. Every day after school, people would talk about what cars they were unlocking and different things that they were doing, and to have basically the exact same thing stuffed into your pocket that you could play on the go was absolutely mind-blowing at the time. This is coming from the generation before, where we were playing things like on our Game Boy Advance, which were truly downscaled versions of anything that we were hoping to play at home on our consoles. Now, not every version of every game for the PSP was a one-to-one with the PS2 counterpart. However, I do want to mention that some of these demakes or downscaled remake versions on the PSP can be as enjoyable, if not more enjoyable, than the original versions. For example, this is 50 Cent Bulletproof, and this version of the game is a top-down isometric shooter with some brawling and hand-to-hand combat, and it's a lot of fun. But if you go back and play the original PS2 version of the game, it's a third-person shooter with really, really bad aiming controls for the time. So them simplifying this game kind of made it a lot more fun, and it's of course not the same game at all, but having the same story and premise and still having the ability to unlock music videos and full soundtracks and stuff like that, it still felt as feature complete, just basically was an entirely different game that I tend to enjoy a lot more. And I didn't even fully get into everything that you can and should do if you own a PSP. The fact that this natively supports PlayStation 1 titles was absolutely amazing in 2000s context. Not even to get into all the homebrew options and emulation that you can do with a PlayStation Portable, which is definitely something that we'll probably cover on this channel soon, because I do plan on making a few more videos on the PlayStation Portable as we mod this guy into oblivion and make it the ultimate handheld. But I just wanted to do this video because I've been spending so much time lately playing PSP, and it's just been really good. And to think that it's a 20-year-old device now is just mind-bending to me sometimes. It feels like the older I get, the less I have a grasp on how much time has really gone away from me, and it's just something cool. But you guys know the deal. If you're new here, make sure you scroll down and hit the subscribe button. If you're a longtime viewer of the content, I want to hear your thoughts down below on maybe making some more content around original hardware and systems. And just let me know, did you grow up playing the PSP? Did you pick one up later? Are you looking to get one for the first time? I want to talk to you about that in the comments down below. So please make sure you leave your thoughts and opinions down there, and we'll see you guys in the next one.